everyone. I am Ashutosh Kumar Singh and currently I am pursuing BA English Honours from SGT University, Gurgaon. This video is a part of my internal assessment for the subject Post-Colonial Literature. The topic for my lecture is famous Chilean poet and writer Pablo Neruda, his work Walking Around. In this video, we will discuss first of all what is post-colonialism, then we'll have a look on the poem, then we'll talk about the poet, that is the Pablo Neruda, then we'll have the critical analysis of the poem, which will include the summary as well. We'll discuss various themes in this poem, and then towards the end we'll try to identify the concept of post-colonialism in this work. So let's have a look at the topic post-colonialism. What is post-colonialism? Post-colonial theory is a method of interpreting, reading and criticizing the cultural practices of colonialism, where it proposes determining powers of representation. Post-colonialism is a theory which studies both the colonizers as well as the colonized people, their responses, the actions, the ideas and the reason behind the colonization. Now we'll move towards the poem, which is Walking Around. The poem Walking Around was written somewhere around 1935, where the poet Pablo Neruda addresses the conflict of man versus society. He discusses how humans have lost their individuality because all that people want to have is what others people already have. It is sad and depressing. The poem, as Neruda communicates the emotion of hopelessness to the readers. You may know that some poems are called narrative poems because they tell a story. Those that do not have a story-like format and are called lyric poems. Walking Around actually has element of both narrative and lyric format. The narrative describes things he sees on a walk. The reader can easily imagine a man walking around in his daily life and observing gardens, houses, shops on the streets and birds in the environment. There is also a lyric element in this poem, as the walk the narrator takes is not chronological. The reader gets the sense that it may be many walks that together add up to a particular impression or emotion. This is sad, despairing poem, and this emotion of hopelessness is strongly communicated to the reader. Now let's have a look at the rhythm, meter and literary devices. This poem is divided into 10 stanzas and it is written in blank verse, which gives it a semblance of a man soliloquizing on his walk. The stanzas are irregular and is in meter. So some stanzas are comprised of 3 lines, some 7, although stanzas comprising 4-6 lines are in standard ones. Neruda uses personification and imagery as his tools to put across his point. So moving forward, now let's have a look at the poet Pablo Neruda. Pablo Neruda, it's the pen name of Ricardo Eliezer Neftali Reyes y Basualdo. He was born in Chile in 1904. Neruda adopted his famous pseudonym early in life. Under this name, he became perhaps the greatest South American poet of 20th century. Although Neruda and his poetry are known worldwide, sometimes Americans in particular have trouble with the man's strong association with the Communist Party. In addition, this poem often proved difficult to translate from the original Spanish. Yet, most students of literature will recognize at least one of Neruda's poems. This lesson will summarize and look at the meaning behind one of Neruda's well-known poems, Walking Around. Let's have the critical analysis of the poem, Walking Around. Pablo Neruda's work, Walking Around, which communicates the conflict of man versus society and the emotions of hopelessness was written somewhere around in 1935, as earlier discussed. Neruda starts the poem with, "It so happens I'm sick of being a man," which gives the poem a tired and irritated mood. He then goes on to point out what Neruda tries to say is that he is worn out. He feels lonely in this appearance oriented business. What Neruda tries to say is that he's worn out. He feels lonely in this appearance oriented business and he's sick of being a man made hold of vanity. He then refers to a barber shop which also concerns appearance. He says that he does not want to see any more gardens, stores, or spectacles, all of which are about appearance. The other two things that he does not want to see is elevators and goods, concern modern life and society's desire for more of everything. Neruda then slows and shows that he is tired of his own vanity as he writes, "I'm sick of my feet and my nails and my hair and my shadow." Neruda further expresses how he wants to declare the evils of a society until he dies. Neruda writes about how he does not want to go on living like he has been living. He wants to share his observations without fear of insecurity. He does not want to be useless or feel useless. He then refers to how each Monday he is forced to go back to the job he hates. As Neruda worked for a government, this shows how he could not express his thoughts about the particular government he was working for. He creates the dark image of death and compares every day of his job to death and then to hell. So Neruda wants to make everyone aware of their vanity, and he would cross God and government to do it, but he is insecure about sharing his thoughts. So analyzing the poem, we can understand that he was frustrated and agitated, but towards the end we can see a theme of hope where he talks about the good things that can be happen or the things which he wants to do before he dies so that he can make his life more meaningful. Now, moving forward, we'll study the themes of the poem. For example, the most important theme is life and death. The narrator grapples often with the theme of his life and death. Rather, his life is in death. So in stanza 1, he considers himself a felled swan instead of a human being, which shows how much he is not happy with this particular body or particular living style of being a human. In stanza 2, he wants to become inanimate. Although he is alive, but he wants to become inanimate. This shows inner frustration. In stanza 4, he shows a spark of life and wishes to do something dramatic before dying, of cold or anything. Further, in stanza 6, we can see that stanza 6 is filled with imagery of death. It is in stanza 6 that the narrator realizes he wishes to live instead of existing like a dying root or a tomb. The next important theme is decay. For example, in stanza 8, 9 and 10, they all three deal with the themes of decay. Extent of yellowish pestilence permeates the stanzas. The broken, cobbled streets, the dilapidated buildings, hospitals, pubs, intestines, all gives out a message of decay and degradation, that how everything is just decaying and degrading and how it is moving towards destruction and nothing productive and fruitful is happening in the life. The next important theme is apathy. The narrator focuses on things around him but never on any passers-by. There is no encounter with any actual person in the length of his walk. As we can see throughout the poem, he has never mentioned about anyone else in the poem. Only what he is talking about, the things he is observing in around his walk. Whether this is deliberate is not made clear to us, but what is apparent is the lack of human connections, which is also in his life as well as in the poem as well. The deep apathy with being a man may stem from the detachment of humans from human. When the natural relation between human beings crumble, the immediate aftermath is degeneration of society. There are umbrellas everywhere, and venoms and umbilical cords. Juxtaposition umbrellas, which signifies security. With venom, we are given a graphic visual of the insecurity everyone is feeling. It is very common for every human being. Later, the umbilical cords may well represent the ones cut from his or her secure place, as the umbilical cord connect a child with his or her mother in the womb, which is the safest place for him. That's why here, by giving the example of umbilical cord, the poet is saying that we are not feeling secure in this world. This metaphor runs deep as it also represents the cut off human from humanity. This metaphor is made all the more powerful by the ending stanzas, which is stanza 10, that I'll stroll along serenely with my eyes, my shoes, my rage, forgetting everything. I walk by, going through office buildings and orthopedic shops and courtyards with washing hanging from the line, underwear, towels, and shirts from which slow, dirty tears are falling, which depicts the only emotions showed in this poem are from non-living objects. So the question is, where are the living objects? Are they not important? Or just this world has become so much materialistic that only the thing which a poet is observing is the non-living object. So it is a poem expressing a man disgruntled by the material world, with its material goods and rampant commercialism. On a deeper level, the narrator could be expressing Neruda's own communist sentiments. The only thing I want is to see no more stores, no gardens, no more goods, no spectacles, no elevators. However, we can hardly call it a propagandist poem. The reason is simple enough. Neruda manages to capture the social and political undercurrent of his poem along with a certain level of existential crisis. Socially, the poem depicts the state of society that is crumbling from within, and it pushes me into certain corners, into some moist houses, into hospitals where the bones fly out the window, into shoe shops that smells like vinegar, and certain streets hideous as cracks in the skin, their sulfur-colored birds and hideous intestines hanging over the doors of houses that I hate. Sulfur is associated with a sickly yellow color and smell, and the imagery indicates diseases, decays, and stench. Also, it can be pollution. In stanza 1, the narrator creates a parallel between artificiality and beauty. A swan is the epitome of beauty, but felt is a synthetic material. Neruda foregrounds beauty with artificiality. If read symbolically, the unnatural swan can signify humanity enshrouded in plasticity and hypocrisy, going through life without feeling any real emotions or connections. Like a waterproof, impenetrable object in wake of both life, boom, and death or destructions, this goes on to show the persona's perspective regarding beauty in a shattered world. Stanza 4 poses a change of tone. The narrator's preoccupation with wanting to be dead is replaced by a frenzied desire to feel alive. Still, it would be marvelous to terrify a law clerk with a cut lily or kill a nun with a blow on the ear. This part reflects Neruda's political consciousness as his narrator eschews bureaucracy and hegemony of church. His hysteric outburst is then quickly explained by his unwillingness to become like an obscure root in stanza 5. The narrator's disinclination to conform the hegemony to bureaucracy, to commercialism, makes his view Monday as a beast at war with him. And with humanity in stanza 7, the passage of time is here showcased with the imagery of tires screeching past in speed. The screeching tires also sound like a wounded beast, personified as a car, an animal, or living things. Now, towards the end, let's have the concept of post-colonialism on the poem. Neruda's use of powerful imagery makes its hard-hitting commentary on society at its worst. The blank verse used in this poem fits the mood and rhythm of the poem, which is dark and erratic. Erratic because it starts off with a passive, despondent tone and changes into hysteric one only to fall back into forced, tired calmness in the end. It is one of the darker poems of Neruda. It encapsulates urges to bring about changes but also the acceptance of things that can't be changed. Here, the post colonial things, all the characteristic of post colonial literature can be implied on this work as it has confusion, a disparity, agitation in the poem, which is the part of post-colonialism. This poem can be a reflection or a reaction against the post-colonialism when after the colonial people were decolonized by the colonizers, their reaction, how they felt can be shown and how only the materialistic things in that society was prevailing over the human connections. So that's all for the day. So with this we come to the end of our lecture and hope you like this lecture. Thank you so much.